Hey guys, I'm back. So today, I'm going to be doing the ever popular now teardown videos of something. So today it's going to be one of these computer DVD, DVD, read-write CD things that has the typical computer connectors on the back, the Molex power connector, and let's see, serial number. You don't need to know that. So you can see it has line out right there, right ground. So if you wanted to use this thing, just power it up, and somehow you'd have to control it probably, but maybe not, and you can just get the line out. But that's not interesting. I'm going to be taking apart to see what is inside this thing. So just undo all the screws. So we'll unscrew it and get to see what's inside this thing. So let's just lift up this lid here. And, okay, that's interesting. So it looks like the screws not only serve to hold down this top case over here, but they also serve to hold down these two boards. As you can see, the screws would go in there and in there to hold down this board, and they'd be held down here, 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 and here on this board. So looks like up top, this board is the sort of like an interface board with just motor connections, and this board over here is where the actual processing is done. So this board right here, you can see there's like ground planes and stuff, but these power planes actually have little diamonds cut out of them, and that's done to decrease their PCB cost, because it basically costs money to remove copper. So they keep all this copper on, basically, and they only remove tiny little bits. So the more, like this PCB, if you take a look at it, mostly copper. That's done to save cost, and then these things are just done so that they can leave all the copper on. So if we disconnect this here, we're just going to pull out all these ribbon cables and take a look at this board here, this first board. Let's see if I can actually get this out. There we go. Okay, there we go, and looks like there's another ribbon cable on the bottom, and here is the bare board. Typical SMD construction. You have a few filter caps here. This is the controller to the optical assembly here. So you have your typical through hole connectors. Here is the power connector. You can see the trace coming off the 5 or 12 volt line is fairly thick to handle all the current. And right here you can see the trace coming off the other one actually has 3 vias. That's done so that the current can be go through all 3 vias, not just one. So it sort of like having thick traces. You can see the traces on these are fairly thick. Right here, this is obviously the main processor of the device. This is some sort of RAM chip, because I've seen this exact same chip on some sort of, on like a computer RAM card. So, you know, that's a RAM chip for something. This tiny one here is that, no. This tiny connector right there goes to the motor, so it would appear that this is a motor driver IC, but I'm 99% sure this is a RAM chip, because it was on a RAM card. So it looks like the connections for the motor actually go following them here and go into this one. You can see the motor connections from this thing go all the way around the board to this, which appears to have some sort of UV erasable coating on it in this little window, but it's maybe a motor. I'm guessing it's a motor driver, because the motor drive traces go into this chip, and then I have no clue what that is. But this is probably a motor driver, or and or I'm guessing, since it has the UV erasable thing, stores the memory for this main CPU, which is made by NEC. So aside from that, nothing interesting on that board. Take a look at the rest of it. So we'll just take this board. Nothing interesting going to be on this board. Just pop it out. and see what we've got. So looks like it's the motor here is just hardwired into the connector. There's no connector on this end. It's just soldered straight on. And it looks like this motor is just hardwired into this board. And the only other thing on this board is a switch that goes down into the assembly and the open and close button. So let's see what that switch does. It appears to get flicked. The switch would go down into that hole right there, where it looks like, depending on whether the drive is up or down, it would flick the switch, so some sort of feedback mechanism. So I'm gonna go take out this optical assembly right now. Okay, so the optical assembly wouldn't come out. I removed these screws, and there's another screw under here, and I just can't get to it, and so I'm just gonna take it off here. You can see there's this worm-style gear motor here on this motor, and as it moves along, it just drives this along these two rails. So that's how they can get the movement of the head. The main motor is right here, so we can take that out to see. It's just going to probably be a regular DC motor. This is going to have to be a stepper or a servo of some sort to actually do anything. Interesting, this whole assembly sits on these rubber like pad things right there. I guess that's to give the whole thing some give so it can wobble around to actually accept a CD if you put it in and not 100% like the perfect place, which is interesting. Just a tip there, if you saw, my screwdriver actually caught the screw. Very handy to have a magnetic screwdriver. Like if the screw is down there, you could just pick it up and take it. So this whole motor drive should just come out. And here is like a PCB. I'm not sure if you can see that, but that looks to be like a mini coil. Yeah, like this style. Let's see how many there are. 1, 2, 3. There's 9 of these. I've seen people. This is a magnet ring inside here. I've seen people use these to make like some high voltage circuits using the spikes from these. And you can take this magnet ring. This is actually the equivalent of a quadruple magnet. So if you are after a very, very weak focusing quadruple magnet, this will do it for you. A very weak quadruple magnet ring. And it's the equivalent of a Type 3 Hibachi cylinder or something. And then if you also need some coils, interesting, arranged in interesting stator, I think is the word for it, stator rotation, you can get a very small stator motor out of this. So let us continue and remove this optical assembly where you're all probably interested in seeing the laser diode, and as I am as well, but that stator and quadruple magnet were an interesting find. Definitely something to play around with if you like high voltage, like I do. So there's definitely a lot of stuff in these. Not much on this main board here. But quite a bit of, looks like these things are press fitted on, but that just snapped right out and pulled out the little rods. It looks like on this side it's just sort of pushing up against the rod, not actually clamped in, and on this side it looks like it's spring clamped, or no, on this side it actually feeds through these holes, but on this side it's just sort of, it goes in like this, so it's not actually clamped in, but on this side the metal rod would go through the holes. So here is, we'll just take a look again at this motor. It appears that there really isn't anything in here besides the optical assembly, which is allowed to, I don't know if you can see that, but it can definitely move around a bit. So on to the optical assembly, which is pretty interesting. So in this optical assembly, there's a few QR codes actually. Here, I'll zoom in and you can scan your screen and see what they do because I don't have a QR scanner. Won't focus. Well, I'll leave it at that. So anyway, we have the input connector. We can just take that off. It appears that right here, are the two laser diodes. There's going to be a red one and an infrared one, and these appear to use the standard pinout, where you can see one pin is not soldered, that pin's not soldered, and these two pins are soldered. Same thing here. So it appears you have two laser diodes, and they appear to be duplicates because they look the same arrangement of pins soldered. I know some IR diodes have 4 pins, but it looks like you can actually get 2 laser diodes out of this assembly, and it even shows you the not used pin, because I know on them there's a not used pin. So I'll get out my mini screwdriver and proceed to take this thing apart. So the shield with the QR codes pops off. If anybody wants me to mail them this shield with the QR codes, just send me your address and I'll mail it to you. It looks like on the thing, interestingly enough, there's a chip there, but it has some black stuff over the part number. So that board just pops right off. It looks like it's one of those boards built on flex, because it's on this flex stuff right here. So it looks like this whole assembly has no actual real PCB on it. It looks like it just has some boards on flex for the whole thing, which is, I assume, fairly standard for these things. Fairly standard for a lot of applications that are small. I mean, you think about it, and there's a whole bunch of CD driving stuff going on in this tiny little assembly, so you do need to make it small. So I guess to save space, you would use a board on flex. But you can see, I guess, they changed the flex green where there's components. So, and interestingly enough, I don't know if you can see this, but this, and this are all trim pots. There's 4 trim pots on this thing. No clue what they're for. And right here you can see there's some sort of mirror, and right there, some sort of mirror, and then there's some sort of light sensing application. I don't know if this is a camera or if this is like one of those things like they have in projectors where it's actually a bunch of individual mirrors and it can control the laser, or whether it's just like a very sophisticated light sensor. I don't know. So I can't really tell, but we'll move that off anyway. But the whole thing has either a huge resistor or a huge cap on it, and so I'm not really sure what this one chip is about, but just remove that and see if you can maybe get a better look at that chip. I don't know, it's the one right there. You can see the die right on it. Put up some high-res pictures. I know this camera doesn't focus macro very well. And this laser diode has already popped off. I unscrewed the screw for it. And looks like this one may be the IR one, seeing as it's square, and I've never seen a square red laser diode, but this laser diode looks like we'll have to go through a bit more work. So I'm going to try to get this last laser diode out. It's held together by... There's plenty of screws on this tiny thing. It must be like half screws or something, because whenever I remove one, there's another one, but the whole thing is like die-cast metal, just pure metal. And there's some sort of strong magnet here, because my screwdriver is getting stuck to it. Highly recommend you have a magnetized screwdriver. But I'm just going around and removing every screw I can see on this, and it appears that most of them are actually gunked to stay in place, so they really don't want you taking apart this thing. Well, let's be honest, it's pretty easy. But you do get a bunch of small screws out of the process, if nothing. But certainly fascinating to take apart these things. So right now I'm taking apart the actual optical assembly. Like this is the got some screws stuck in there. Well, I do have some screws stuck in there, but this is the actual optical assembly. There appears to be some magnets on either side of these. I don't know if this is to cause... Usually there's a coil wound around this lens that allows it to focus and move side to side, as you can see there. Interesting screw right here. As you can see, it's only screwed on the very last little part. and there was a spring on the screw, sort of similar to this. I don't know what its function served, but certainly interesting. And it looks like the only function this mirror serves is to send the light to this tiny little IC. Nothing else it has to do. Man, these screws are really stuck onto that magnet good. Must be a strong magnet. Evidently, they really need to move that. I think they can move this back and forth to get better focusing or something like that. Serves the function of focusing. Man, these screws are... half of them are so gunked I can't get them. So I pried off this whole assembly here and broke the flex in the process, but I'm going to see what is under this thing. So I'll just hopefully crack out the PCB, and that looks like a shield. And another one of these identical, not identical, but very similar light sensors. See if I can, here's one, and here's the other. So one just looks like an enlarged version of the other. But the interesting thing was, it was aimed at this lens here. There's a second lens here, was aimed through. There's a tiny hole in this thing, and it was aimed through a tiny lens into the assembly, and it appears to be in the same line as this, so that is interesting right there. Okay, so guys, you can see here I've taken the laser diode out of the laser assembly, and what I've done to figure out the pin out of it, I just soldered some wires, as you can see, to the back of it, is the second laser diode, I presume the IR laser diode here, each of them has 3 pins, and on the back of this, as you can see, one of the pins is not connected, so that must be the not used pin. And then of the other 2 pins, a pin from this one and a pin from this one were connected together. The pin from this one and the other pin from this one weren't. So I presumed that the pins that was connected from one laser diode to the other must have been ground. So I hooked that up, and as you can see, when I put on 2.8 volts, it may not be at the camera, but if you notice, it flashes really bright and then gets dim. Like, I don't know what's up with that. But it does flash very bright for a split second when I touch the leads, and then get very dim. And I don't have any laser optics for that, but I'm running this at 2.8 volts with just a standard lab power supply, and I just have the wires soldered onto the back like this. So I don't really have any laser optics for that, but I found that pretty interesting. I don't know why it just sort of flashes really bright and then turns off. I really don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. But as you could see on this thing, I have some pictures of it I'll put up. This is the lens assembly that you saw from the top. It would be sitting in the sled around here, but it'd be sitting in that assembly, and it'd be able to move up and down. But if you see there's the magnets, it would actually be sitting in this thing. It'd be sitting in the middle in there, and you can see these are the 2 magnets here, and on either side on the PCB there's 4 coils, and they're wound on the PCB itself with traces, and the traces are extremely fine. Yeah, the traces on this thing are so fine that I can't actually see it, but you can see the wires, the little magnet wires come off of there. That's very interesting. I haven't really ever seen that before. So if any of you guys know how I could get this laser up and running continuously, or get that initial flash to actually be focused like a laser, please let me know. But in the meantime, that's still interesting. So that's that. So now I'm going to take a closer look at this stator motor assembly. So obviously this here just pops off like that, and you're left with the stator. But this is, I can't actually get to the back of these coils. But if you notice right here,